Good evening and welcome to the 27th episode of the Soccer Scene with myself and Noel O'Connor. Noel, really bright result, for the want of a better term, to discuss. Huge result for Treaty United last Friday in the Munster Derby, gaining some revenge, I suppose, on Cork City. A 2-0 victory in Turner's Cross against the league leaders. A momentous result for Tommy Barrett and his side on the evening. Considering going into the tie, Noel, we had fears, obviously, because of the previous displays against Cork.
Yeah, and I suppose we did, but we also said that if they got after him, which they hadn't done in the previous three games, we obviously didn't predict that. You know, it was hard to predict that they were going to win. You were kind of half hoping that they might get a point, but listen, they were fantastic on the night. From the first whistle to the last, they totally dominated the game, and I'd say it was the quietest outing for Jack Brady, which says a lot. Can't recall him after the first 3 or 4 minutes even having to make a save. So certainly is a massive boost to Treaty, and they should get huge momentum out of it. And probably tinged with a bit of regret, say, you know, from the other three games that they didn't approach them somewhat similar. Because I did say that Cork played a lot of pretty football, but also I saw them against Wexford a few weeks ago, and Wexford, while they lost 1-0, you know, they didn't really inspire a huge amount of confidence. A pretty sight to watch, but I wasn't quite sure if you know how they react to maybe playing against a physical team, which Treaty certainly were on Friday night. And you know, they put them under pressure all over the pitch. They crowded the midfield, and Cork had no answer on the night.
Absolutely, and I suppose on the goals, Noel, as well, an absolutely fantastic goal from Ben O'Riordan, who recently signed for Cove, has slotted in at right back, stepped into the middle of the park to intercept a sloppy pass and rifled one in from over 30 yards. Brilliant start for Treaty, and probably unexpected. Shocked Cork, I'd imagine, as well. Then you had the penalty. I suppose in a second question, Noel, what was your view on the penalty? Because I know the Cork commentator was pretty irate and I feel that Cork commentators are pretty biased on LOI TV, to be honest with you, but I felt it probably was a penalty and a poor enough tackle from Hakkinen in the box, but Ludden dispatched it fairly well.
Yeah, look, and it was a definite penalty. You know, it was a very awkward challenge. You know, we spoke about the Cork City squad in general and how many of them would be good enough if they got to the Premier League. I felt that, I'm not quite sure what Colin Healy was up to on Friday night. He certainly picked a back four. It was easy to see that, but after that, it was very hard to make out who was playing where outside. Dylan McGlade on the left, who certainly did well for the first half an hour of the game. Every time I've seen him play, I think he does quite well. But then you had Louis Britton, and you had Barry Coffey and Rory Keating, and I didn't know which one of them was playing up front, which one of them was playing on the right, or where they were supposed to play. And in the end, you know, the contribute, particularly with those three, the contribution was minimal, and they're three very good players. Well, particularly Britton and Barry Coffey are proven to be very good players. I've seen Rory Keating a few times now, and I'm wondering, did Galway know what they were doing when they let him off at the end of last season? Because bar scoring goals in matches where Cork might be a couple of goals up, certainly hasn't done a whole lot, and he had a great chance to actually put Cork ahead in the first 3 or 4 minutes, and he kind of inexplicably fell over himself about 6 yards out. So I just felt that Cork maybe were a bit too cocky, if you like, or underestimated Treaty. And if you looked at the Treaty form, in fairness, it was pretty good outside the Waterford game. They had won 4 games, and you know, we were talking about that problem they had in midfield, and certainly with Mark Walsh coming back and releasing Colin McNamara back into the middle, made a huge difference there. And I thought, in fairness to Lee Devitt, he played well as well, you know. So, you know, that one change, you know, seemed to make a massive difference to them. But listen, they were just in a different zone totally to Cork, and they probably could have won by more.
Yeah, you brought me on to that point, Noel, that I was going to bring to you. Callum McNamara freed up back into midfield. It's something we've discussed in great detail over the last maybe 3 weeks on what they could do in midfield. And as you said, I know that Tommy mentioned it in his interview afterwards about Lee Devitt's performance. You know, people might say we were being critical of Lee Devitt. It wasn't so much Lee Devitt in an individual term. It was himself and Joe Collins maybe not right for each other. when Callum McNamara, went back in there the other night, Lee Devitt's performance upped a lot. Do you think that was a big reason for it?
I think it possibly is. In fairness, we might have to see them play a couple of games together just to see, how it goes. But and Tommy was right. He kind of sat in Callum McNamara a little bit in front of the back four at the start. Now, as the game went on and as the Cork threat, if you like, got less and less, I saw Callum McNamara, venture further up the pitch. But it was hard to pick out a bad performance, really. I thought everyone with Treaty played well, particularly in the first half, the way they were set up. Willie Armshaw, he did a lot of running and he linked up very well with Success Erdogan. They worked really hard. They showed that running ability, and they kept that Cork defence honest as well and got Treaty up the pitch, when they had soaked up a bit of pressure. But listen, overall, it was a great performance, and that looks like a really, really good settled team now. And if they all can stay well, and with Jack Lynch maybe in the mix in another week or two, I think it's important that they stick to that 11 and let them build a bit of momentum from here on in, because they certainly have the bit between their teeth now.
Yeah, Success Erdogan was picked ahead of Enda Curran, Noel, who would be Treaty's top scorer. I know that's something you said Tommy may play with that idea because of the threat in behind and maybe trying to occupy those Cork defenders. You mentioned it there again. What did you make, I suppose, of his performance overall? And I suppose you probably think that it was a very good call from Tommy, considering you did mute it before the game that could happen.
No, I think it was, and I think he got it right. And look, all players have different qualities. It doesn't mean straight away that Success is, a better player than Enda or Curran. We know how good he is. We've seen his goals, but just a different kind of player. I said it the week before. I thought that he didn't fancy it against Waterford too much because, there was a lot of running off the ball and a lot of hard graft, if you like, to be done. It's not everybody's cup of tea, and it certainly is Success Erdogan, and that's exactly what Treaty needed. They needed a hard-running striker up top, that it just do those hard yards, and they're so important, particularly when you're away from home and you're looking for something. And look, it all worked out really well. But Tommy got his selections spot on Friday night.
And do you think, Noel, that this result, in comparison with the other results, gives credit to Tommy's assertion that, Treaty may have been burnt out going into the Cork games in previous games because they played against the likes of Galway just 3 days before it, and they were much fresher going into the game and obviously able to put their stamp on it more on Friday last week?
No, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, and particularly the games that we saw, because it wasn't say that Treaty played well maybe for 60 or 70 minutes in those games and then ran out of steam, which is what you do. Like if fatigue doesn't hit you in the first 10 minutes or 15 minutes of a game, it hits you in the last 15 minutes of the game. And the disappointing thing for those games, particularly the two home ones, if I can remember them, was that Cork were out of side after about 25 minutes. And I'm sure, like, looking back, there'll certainly be a tinge of regret, that maybe there wasn't a different approach to those games. But look, you can't change what happened, in the past, and they certainly got it right on Friday night, and also proved the point maybe that this Cork team isn't the all singing and all dancing team that everyone thought they were.
Absolutely, it was a great night. And in the context of the overall playoff race, Noel, it was absolutely huge as well, because Wexford drew with Cove Ramblers. It now puts Treaty 4 points ahead of them with 7 games remaining. I know they have to play Wexford in that series, so obviously it's far from over, this race, but it was a very pivotal night.
No, I think it was. And, you have a couple of results there, in that 4 points, and, the games are running out, and something that Treaty hadn't done, obviously, was to get 3 points against Cork. So, you'll be looking at the other games, and Tommy's right to say that, every game is a difficult game, and, the Cove Wexford one with the Shane Keegan intrigue thrown into that as well. I'm sure Wexford, were quite disappointed to drop the 2 points there, but they have to keep their eye on the ball now, Treaty, and make sure that they don't make the same slip up. But look, it looks like it's going to go down to the last couple of games either way. It's interesting to see how Waterford have picked up now. And another point I would make, like, Waterford seemed to do their homework very well on Treaty, in that they pinned both the Treaty fullbacks back in their own edge of the box nearly last week and kept them very busy. And I would have said before that particularly when Jack Lynch is playing, a lot of the Treaty attack start from both their fullbacks with Mark Ludden and Jack Lynch, and it seemed that Cork didn't really heed that lesson, and they gave both the fullbacks, the license to run into their half on the ball. I mean, all they did with Ben O'Riordan was retreat, and he took his opportunity and scored a scorcher of a goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that Treaty will be looking to build on that, Noel, no, because they've only had the one defeat, obviously, in the midst of 5 victories in 6. So they're in great form going into the Athlone Town encounter, which comes this Friday night at Lizzie Woolen. Athlone are obviously the basement side, Noel, in the division, but we do know they've given Treaty very close games this season, to be fair. And obviously Treaty had to score very late through Stephen Christopher on their last visit to Athlone to snatch a draw. Do you think that that result will be on the mind of Treaty in terms of how they set their game plan for playing on this AstroTurf pitch and their focus on the game?
I think really what happened last Friday will have a bigger bearing. I think they'll have the bit between their teeth now. They look a much stronger side than they were in those couple of weeks. Around that time, they got the late equaliser against Athlone. Hopefully, everyone came out of the game well on Friday night, and you've Mark Walsh now with a game under his belt, and it's hard to believe that they can't go there, with the right attitude again, and not collect not collect 3 points, and shouldn't really be troubled if their attitude is right and they're focused and they get out and do the job, with that 11 on the pitch and the likes of Enda Curran to come off the bench as well. So it's hard to see him not picking up the 3 points on Friday night.
Yeah, there is huge competition, obviously, in the squad, Noel. You've mentioned it though a couple of times, and I'd probably agree with you that after a performance like that in a Munster derby, there's no change in that 11, I'd imagine, unless it's forced for Tommy Barrett.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's important, because you need to reward it as well. And you're getting to the real business end of the season where momentum is huge. I think we spoke about momentum last year and how important it was. And, in fairness to Treaty, they've hung in there, and, they've had a few stuttering times where they've gone a few games, without results, and they've been thereabouts. But certainly now they seem to be pitching into the right kind of form with 7 or 8 games to go, and it's important that you keep the bit between your teeth and don't let that momentum slip out of your grasp.
Yeah, Treaty have been in the playoff places, Noel, virtually from the start. Obviously, I know that they've been in 5th place for the majority of the season, but as you said there, seems like this is their best patch of the season. You're going into the final stretch, and even judging by maybe the Championship in England and League One, that if you can build up that momentum, stranger things have happened than a full run if you get to the playoffs.
Absolutely, because I think, and it was a bit difficult maybe last year where they made the playoffs with 3 or 4 games to go, and there was a bit of chopping and changing with the team, kind of minding fellas, which was fair enough. But the context this year may be that they have to play their best team every single week, right to that very last day. And when it's in doubt and you get it at the very end, well, then, that builds its own momentum as well. And, they won't fear any team in that playoff if they get in that way, which looks like that is the way that they are going to get in.
Yeah, certainly, because outside of Galway, who they have run close in a couple of games as well, they've beaten all those teams so far this season, to be fair. On a final note, Noel, the club have obviously appointed John McLean today as the new academy director. I have to admit myself, I don't know much about John McLean. I know he's replacing Shane Keegan now going forward. It's a difficult one for yourself as well, I suppose. What do you make of the appointment? I suppose, look, at least, you needed someone in there, it's fair to say, because it's been a few weeks since Shane Keegan's departure.
I actually was the first I heard of it is that you mentioned it there. So I don't actually know anything about the chap. I'm not sure who he is, but I'm sure I'll find out in the next few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that we have plenty to discuss next week as well. After this Athlone game, we'll be looking forward to an FAI Cup clash after that as well for Treaty United, and in the form they're going into that game against Maynooth. Hopefully we'll be looking forward to a quarter-final clash, not to put the jinx or the hex on them before that encounter. We don't want to be taking that lightly, but no one will be listening to me anyway, it's fair to say. Thanks once again, obviously, to Noel for joining us again this evening, and we hope you join us for the 28th episode of the Soccer Scene